I could actually buy property with no money and then sell the contract and make some money from the spread. One of the lessons I'd like to share with your listeners is if
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Tanner with me all the way from Hawaii, and it's time we discuss what it's like investing in real estate. Tanner, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Investing in real estate. I spoke with Dan Gomer, talked to briefly about his stint in investing in real estate. It was a really cool story. He was a teacher, decided to get out of teaching, invested in real estate, made a bunch of money, lost a bunch of money. Really, really awesome story. So I'm very, very curious to hear what your story is like about investing in real estate. How did you get started doing that?
Long story short, I did want to share that very similar to you when I was growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just knew I wanted to have an awesome life. And so my journey started in college when I started taking a lot of different classes. I basically went undecided and took every 101 class under the sun, sociology, psychology, astronomy, philosophy 101, like all these classes. And even after graduating college, I ended up majoring in business, and entrepreneurship was my focus because I thought, I really want to, my end goal is to have a great family, take care of my family, and be able to sustain my life. And I didn't know if a philosophy degree was going to be able to get me there. So I went business and entrepreneurship. I have this business mind. I'm always thinking of different ideas. And so I have had a ton of different jobs, everything from being a raft guide in Alaska to selling commercial fabric for a fabric manufacturer, like 50 to 500 yards of fabric at a time. I've started coaching businesses. Yeah, just really all sorts of different jobs. And I started thinking about, okay, the things that I liked within those jobs, the things I didn't like. And I got really scientific on it. I started grading the jobs that I had and making notes on all these things that I was doing. And, I was looking around and I thought, okay, now is the time I really want to make some good money. And I was learning about real estate. And I thought, okay, I heard about this thing where I could actually buy property with no money and then sell the contract and make some money from the spread. They call it wholesaling. And so I dove in, and this is one of the lessons I'd like to share with your listeners is if there's something you want to do, dive in and learn from the best. And so what I did was I started listening to podcasts related to wholesale real estate. I started going to meetups, local meetups where they were talking about this stuff. And I even did a door knock on one of the most famous wholesale real estate guys in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I ended up getting a meeting with him where he basically opened his office up to me for a week and he let me basically just watch him work and see how he does business. So I was really inspired. I could see that, hey, this is possible. And that's a huge point when you're pursuing a new career, something you're interested in, the first thing you have to have is this belief that it is possible. And when you see other people doing it, it becomes even more real. You're just really one step away, you're one conversation away. And so for anyone who's done wholesale real estate, they know that it's not as glamorous as the people on YouTube or these coaches, these gurus try to make it out to be. It really is a grind, and it is possible. And so my first deal in wholesale real estate, I made $1,000, and I was absolutely just blown away that I had this dream, I had this goal, and it's possible. I kept learning, I kept experimenting, trying new things, and not everything was working, but I was getting some traction and I was getting better at talking on the phone and negotiating. And so then I realized like, okay, this wholesaling stuff is good, but like I really want to make, some of my the people I was learning from, they were talking about making, anywhere from 45 to $100,000 on every deal. They don't touch deals unless they're making that kind of money on it. And I'm thinking, you know, I'd like that. That sounds good. And so I shifted gears to private real estate investing. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have the money to invest in these properties. And what I was learning was that if you have a good deal in front of you, you don't have to have the money. There are other investors who are willing to put some money down and and they of course they have to have trust and faith in you and you have to have a game plan. So what I did was I would find these deals and I would put a deal under contract. I would find a real estate investor to invest all the money that we needed to fix the property up. I would put my sweat equity into the property. I would do the work, fix it up, and then we would either split the profit at the end or I would give them a percentage on the money that they put down. For example, in um, in the stock market, most investors would love to see 7 to 8% on their money. And so if I offer them 10 to 15% on their money, they get it back within 4 to 6 months. Well, that's a good deal to them. So, I started getting really creative with how I'm structuring these deals. And, all of a sudden the snowball effect started happening after one investor believed in me, gave me a chance. Then another opportunity came up. And then, um, you know, just to share a little bit more, I had some family land. It was just raw land, and there was this rundown cabin there. And I thought, there's an opportunity here. This was like right when before Airbnb was a thing. And my older brother, in fact, said, "Hey man, you should try Airbnb. It's a new thing on the West Coast, and I think it's gonna make its way to the East Coast. You should try." I said, "People aren't gonna want to rent an off-the-grid cabin out in the woods." And I said, "But you know what? I'm gonna try it. Why not?" So I put a little bit of work into it, listed it on Airbnb. Sure enough, within a week, I had my first booking. And then this just started snowballing. And after a year of renting this cabin, which was, I mean, it didn't have walls. There were a few windows and a creaky old door, And so after some time, I'd built up some money. So I took all the money that I had made from renting it and I reinvested it into the cabin. And I fixed it up. We There's a air conditioning unit in there and a generator. So it's an off the grid cabin on about 10 acres of land, and people love it. This was around when COVID hit and everyone was stuck inside. And I don't know if you remember or not, but all the national parks closed down. So people couldn't even get outside to go camping at their favorite campground anymore. But because Airbnb was a private company, essentially you're renting it to these owners instead of these official businesses, we were still able to run our businesses. And so during COVID, my business absolutely blew up within the Airbnb space. I started popping up these little, basically, I bought another little cabin, fixed it up just good enough, put it at the edge of the woods. And the same approach was this off the grid, connect with nature, connect with your family, get out of your house. And yeah, things just started snowballing, rolling. So,
Wow, that is really really amazing. There's so many cool things about this story. So for one, I'd like you to talk about like grading the jobs, the things you like, the things you didn't like. That's very analytical, like you said. It almost reminds me of something I would do, like take a very analytical approach, the pros, the cons, that kind of a thing.
yes.
Working backwards, you talked about finding investors. You said you didn't necessarily need the money. You just need to find the opportunities and then find the investors to cover the cost of the investment, essentially. Where
Yes.
did you find these investors?
There are Facebook groups, and also you can just Google real estate investors in my area, is another way you connect with investors that way. And they are used to talking to people on the phone. That's what they do. So even though I was a young guy, I was maybe, I don't know, maybe 24, 25 years old. They were still open to at least having a brief conversation with me. And then because I had been listening to podcasts, I had been diving into the books about real estate. They could tell that I knew at least a little bit of what I was talking about. So they were willing to give me a little bit of time. And when I said, "Hey, I've got this deal, wanted to see if you're interested in it, um, wanted to see if I could pick your brain on it." And with real estate investors, they know when there's a good deal in front of them. And when you have a good deal, the money is easy to find. The money part seems like the biggest obstacle that we have to overcome when it comes to investing in real estate. But if you have the right deal, it's really not. And so I'll touch on how to find these deals. So one way to do it, they call it driving for dollars. You just drive around your neighborhood or you drive around your city and you find these homes that are in distress. It looks like no one's there, and then you just go knock on the door or you knock on the neighbor's door and you say, "Hey, do you know what's going on with this property?" And they may say, "Oh, so and so had passed away 4 years ago. They've got three kids and none of them live in the area." So with the properties that I worked on, it wasn't a house that was all fixed up and pretty. It was the house that everyone kind of, as they were driving by, they looked away from that house. But for me and for investors, people interested in this stuff, we're in the business of solving big problems. And so the bigger the problem you can solve, the more money you can potentially make.
So you talked before about you buy a house like you just said. You buy one, you fix it up, and then you sell it again, turn a profit. You split the profit with the investors essentially. What happens when during the process where things go south with the real estate market, where all of a sudden like housing prices dip, like back in 2008 when we had the housing crash, what happens in a situation like that? Have you experienced that, and how do you cover your losses in an instance like that?
Yeah, so in real estate, you don't make your money on the sale, you make your money on the purchase. So what that means is when I'm negotiating a price to purchase a property, I'm considering all of these things. And so some people, when I give them an offer, it is below market value because the house isn't worth market value. Oftentimes the whole house needs to be gutted and fixed. And I tell them, I could open up a wall and we might have to replace all the plumbing in the whole house. I might get in there and we realize a part of the floor has rotted out. We have to replace a whole part of this floor. So when I'm negotiating, I'm telling the potential seller all the things that could potentially go wrong. And that helps them understand why I'm offering the price that I'm offering.
Okay, now in doing this, I'm assuming you team up with other specialists, like carpenters or kind of old school, but or plumbers, electricians. Do you have? I'm assuming you have the same people you typically use. How did you go about finding those trusted professionals?
It's word of mouth and it's about relationships at the end of the day. So, people who are considering doing this, we don't realize it, but our network extends much further than we may think. So I love technology. I know that there are good things about it, that there are potentially bad things about it, but I leverage the power of social media, specifically Facebook, because you can put a simple post out on Facebook that says, "Hey, I'm looking um for a real estate investor. Does anyone in my community know anyone?" And people love to share their connections and share their feedback. Or say, "Hey, I need a plumber. I need someone who's reliable and trustworthy. Do you guys have anyone?" And within your network, you would be amazed at how many people we all know. I mean, is it the what's the law? The 6 degrees of
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation. Yeah. So really, we're just a few degrees away from connecting with anyone that could potentially help us.
And it's neat. It's really neat to see that. Like on LinkedIn, for instance, I connect with the different people that are on my show here, and I remember I saw this one person. It was I think they were an auctioneer, and I was like a second step away from them. I'm like, oh, cool, an auctioneer. I should see if I connect with them, get them on the show. So there definitely is a lot to it. You just don't know who it is you don't know and how close they are to you. It's crazy, crazy. So you talked about technology, which is awesome. Let's talk about technology. I'm going to tie the money back into this. In this day and age, when there's so many scam artists out there, how do you present yourself as not being one of those people when you're looking for an investor?
It's authenticity. And again, if you can leverage your network, for example, say you put a Facebook post out or a LinkedIn post out and you say, hey, I'm looking for an investor to go in on a business deal that I found. And then say your friend John says, hey, I know this guy, Thomas, right, who's a real estate investor. When you connect with Thomas, say, hey, Thomas, John said that you were a guy that could help me with this problem or might be interested in what I'm working with. And that helps create that tie.
That makes complete sense. You're not doing these cold calls at all. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's jump back to when you first started. You talked about this real estate, I think it was a real estate agent or the wholesale, the person involved with real estate in North Carolina. The person
Yes.
opened up the office to you for a week, I believe you said.
Yes.
What did you say to this person that convinced them, for lack of better words, to take you under their wing for a week? How did you make that happen?
The first thing I did was I was listening to his podcast, and his name is Karl Spielvogel, and they call him Uncle Karl. And in one of his podcasts, he mentioned that this lady that they were trying to get in contact would not open her door. And so they sent one of his secretaries with a box of nothing bundt cakes to her door to kind of try to sweeten her up a little bit per se. And so the the secretary brought the nothing bundt cakes. She opened the door and they had a conversation because she brought something. She wasn't just trying to negotiate a deal off the jump. She brought something of value. And so when it came to Karl, I had went 2 times prior, and one of his secretaries said, he's busy, come back another time. The next time I went, he's busy, come back another time. So I said, I'm thinking if you try the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, then, Einstein says that's craziness right there. And so I got smart. I said, all right, I'm going to bring a whole case of nothing bundt cakes to the office. The secretaries are going to love me. And maybe, just maybe, they'll give me a chance to have a brief conversation with him. Originally, I just asked for 10, 15 minutes of his time. I just wanted to meet the guy. I just wanted to see someone who I had learned so much from in person and thank him. And so I went with the box of nothing bundt cakes. And she said, give me 1 minute. She walked in the back office. Within 2 minutes, he comes out. We had over an hour-long conversation. He enjoyed the conversation so much. He said, I want you to come back tomorrow, and you're welcome to come back for a whole week to watch me and work with me. So that's the story.
That is awesome. And this topic is actually very timely. I was speaking with my wife earlier today, and I said that she was doing stuff for work, and like we had a conversation later, and I told her, I was like, I don't know if it's called the psychology of a favor, but I was like, but I'm going to call it that. And it's the idea is that if you need a favor from someone, you provide that value first. You do something for them first, and then on a subliminal level, on a subconscious level, it creates the seed that they owe you, even if they don't recognize it. So that what you're saying is very, very timely. And I remember when I was talking to Dalen Huso. He has a pool business. His story was really, really cool. He talked about starting with no money, just a brush and a net. But that same idea where you bring value first, you lead with the value, and then you go afterwards. That's really, really a
Yes.
cool story. Going back, you talked about like diving in and really just getting everything from the experts, finding the experts and learning as much as you can from them. And then you talked about going to meetups. How did you find meetups in your area? So I know very little about meetups. I know they exist. I know what they are, but I've never tried to find one. Are there platforms for meetups, or is it just simple as like Google search for meetups? What was that like
Yeah,
for you? How did you find that?
Yeah, you can Google search it. And also, there's a website literally called meetup.com. You can go and they have all different types of meetup groups. And yeah, you can just search your topic. And there's a good chance if you live in a medium sized to large city, there are a few meetups happening every week
That's
with it.
amazing. I had no idea. I should know this sort of thing. Clearly did not. Okay. So before we started recording, you talked about you're currently doing software development in some capacity. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk some about what that is like, what you're doing with that?
Software has always been a passion of mine because I've always wanted to connect with more people, to reach, to have a broader reach. And I realized that brick and mortar, you can only reach the people within your community. Whereas with software and technology, you can essentially tap into the entire world within the click of a button. And so, you know, I was excited about it. I'm interested, but I had this limiting belief that I'm not the type of person that can learn coding. That held me back for many years from starting these ideas that I had. And it wasn't until a few years ago, about 2 years ago, that these large language models like ChatGPT and OpenAI started coming out. And what I noticed was the bottleneck just expanded to where people who have very little knowledge in coding can now start coding with English. We can just tell it what we want and it will teach us exactly how to do it step by step. And so that was one approach, was learning through that. But my second approach, getting back to what I learned with real estate, was I need a model. I need someone to show me the way, to teach me a little bit more in person, because I'm a people person. And so I hired a mentor to teach me how to code. And so I told him, this is my idea. I want to build this. And as we're building it, I'd like for you to teach me. And so for about 8 months, I learned from him and got to build out my first project. It's an iOS app. And yeah, we built it out. And now I'm on my fourth project. My second project, it was another iOS app. I built about 90% of it, and then I outsourced 10%. It was the paywall side, that's something I had never done before. My third project is a Google Chrome extension that mutes YouTube ads. And my fourth project is it revolves around cryptocurrency where people can, it's essentially a futures marketplace for Bitcoin. So people can make predictions on what they think the price of Bitcoin will be and make money.
So many really cool things here. I actually had a mentor on the show a few weeks ago at this point. His name was Doug Lawrence. And talked about getting a mentor or being a mentor, both sides of the coin. Really, really cool. So that was neat. Now, how does what you're describing from the futures, how does that differ from like using an exchange? How does that work?
An exchange is using US dollars, where what I'm creating is a Web3 app where people are using stable coins, which are basically tokens on the blockchain. So I like to point it similar to when you go to Chuck E. Cheese and you give them some dollars and then they give you Chuck E. Cheese tokens. So you're using these tokens within the ecosystem I've created to play this game, and then you can convert those tokens back to US dollars to spend.
Tanner, all this information you have is just really, really cool stuff. I mean, from the real estate wholesaling to creating different web applications or different mobile applications, browser extensions, getting involved with cryptocurrency and the blockchain. You have a lot of stuff going on. And I feel like we could probably talk for hours about this because I mean, once you get into technology, I am all in on technology. So, but unfortunately, like that, are running a little short on time. But one thing I'd like to do whenever I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, more about your business. You have a lot of things to choose from, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, first off, I just want to say for anyone out there who might not know exactly what they want to do, I would just remind them that for me, the most important part on my journey is to stay curious, to always have a curious mind and stay open to see the future as bright. Like there's something good in the future. And I truly believe that. I believe that we live in the best time in the history of humanity. You know, of course, there are big problems that we have to solve as society, but in general, in all regards, our human experience is getting better and better, and I believe that's only going to continue. So keep a curious mind, be open to trying something new. Go out there and find a mentor who's doing something that you're interested in. Learn if that's the type of person you want to be like, then go learn from them. But when it comes to me, you can find me at Tanner the Vision on all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and YouTube. My latest project is called Bitcoin Bets. You can find me on X there or my YouTube channel, Bitcoin Bets. It revolves around cryptocurrency and the future of Bitcoin if you're interested in that stuff. Yeah, I'm always open to having a conversation with curious souls. So I guess that's all I really have to plug in for myself. It's a pleasure chatting with you, Dan. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Tanner, the pleasure's all mine. Such a great conversation. Unlike that, I feel like I could talk to you. I could speak with you for hours. I really feel that. But again, just super awesome having you. I'll make sure I get all of those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes. They'll be on the website. They'll be all over the place. So when people are trying to find you, they can easily find you. Tanner, it's been awesome having you on Time We Discussed, and we learned what it's like to invest in real estate.
Pleasure. Thank you.